Images of U.S. military planes with U.S. military personnel. You see the lines of deportees filing in, one behind the other. You cannot see their faces. You just see them from the side and from the back.
Joining me now with more on Trump's actions are two top political analysts. Ybeth Bruzual is an anchor for Spectrum News 13 in Orlando, Florida. Tim Boyum is a political anchor for Spectrum News 1 in Raleigh, North Carolina. And Tim, I want to play two sound bites for you. One is from Trump's inaugural address in 2017, and the other is from his address on Monday. Let's take a look.
The crime and the gangs and the drugs that have stolen too many lives and robbed our country of so much unrealized potential. This American carnage stops right here and stops right now. As Commander-in-Chief, I have no higher responsibility than to defend our country from threats and invasions, and that is exactly what I am going to do. We will do it at a level that nobody's ever seen before.
So now, Tim, is what President Trump said this year any real different from what he was saying 8 years ago? Is he promising more of the same?
In some ways, yes. Although I will say beyond the word carnage that we heard in the 2017 speech that he gave, I think we're hearing more aggressive kind of tone in 2025. I think he used the word invasion a couple times during the inaugural address here in 2025. I think the real big difference is less is what he said and more what is being done. I was up in Washington just a couple weeks ago talking to several Republican members of Congress who were there back then and now, and they say that there is a much more disciplined, organized administration coming into office this time. They have a list of things that they wanted to do. And of course, what we've seen with these executive orders already, that they seem to be more in place to what they want to do and more organized to do that. So I think the actions are much different than the words in 2017, and that's the real big difference.
And Ybeth, one of the big actions that's been promised is mass deportation. Have we seen that start to happen yet? The border czar for the new administration, Tom Homan, has said that there would be targeted ICE raids. What do we know about these early raids that have been reported, and how different are they from what ICE has done in the past?
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here. President Trump's press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, has been posting so much on X about this leading up to today on X. And so she's posted a lot of words, lots of images as well that have been reshared. At last time that I checked, and I'm sure that number has fluctuated, it was something like it was reshared like 12,000 times. Images of U.S. military planes with U.S. military personnel. You see the lines of deportees filing in, one behind the other. You cannot see their faces. You just see them from the side and from the back. And, like Tim Boyum was saying, the message is clear. But I've got to tell you, the president of Mexico was also checking out her social media platforms, says that they're keeping an open channel of communication with the U.S., even citing that the first call, she said, that Secretary of State Marco Rubio made this week was to none other than Mexico. I think that's basically underscoring the importance of keeping the channels of communication open. Also, I've seen stuff on PBS, some published reports saying that migrants can now be arrested at churches and schools after Trump administration threw out some policies. That stopped me on my tracks. The department said in that article, Acting Secretary Benjamin Huffman issued a directive earlier this week. The ICE guidance dates back to 2011, in case you're wondering. So Customs and Border Protection issuing a similar guidance in 2013.
Okay, and now, Tim, there are about 24 states that are already suing, and at least one federal judge has already temporarily blocked Trump's move to end birthright citizenship for children of undocumented immigrants, which runs, of course, counter to a constitutional provision that says pretty much anybody born here is automatically considered a citizen. So they've set up a legal battle, but the Trump administration won't necessarily win that one, right?
Not necessarily, definitely. And, the North Carolina Attorney General, new Attorney General, is actually one of the attorneys general that was part of that lawsuit that was filed. Yeah, I mean, I just had a segment with a couple of constitutional experts on my show last night, and they were discussing this back and forth. One is kind of conservative, one is more liberal. And for the most part, they both agree that this is not constitutional. There's some caveats, though, and I think there's a phrase or two in the amendment that I think may be looked at very closely. And when I asked the question, yes, but the politics of the Supreme Court these days, will that make a difference? And they both kind of shrugged their shoulders and said maybe. So I think on the face of it, most people think that this is unconstitutional, but the way that the courts are so political these days, that is possible. And if you follow conservative circles on social media, they're parsing many, many cases of the 14th Amendment to say that maybe it is possible to do this. So I think on the face of it, most constitutional experts say it's unconstitutional and it won't pass muster, but you just never know in today's political climate.
Okay. Ybeth, I want to pick up on something you mentioned before, which is the situation on the Mexican border. We saw John Salazar's report from the border, and we know that President Trump has reinstated a policy known as Remain in Mexico, which during his first term forced migrants to wait in Mexico until they could get a hearing in a U.S. immigration court. How is Mexico responding to these early moves?
Right before we started the segment, I was busy trying to compile more information, and Mexico announced a program called Mexico Te Abraza. Translated in English, it means Mexico embraces you. And so, again, the president of Mexico was talking about this and other folks within the Mexican government. What does it do? It includes setting up receiving sites at various locations in Mexico. What happens there? A lot. They fill out paperwork. They also get transportation so people can reach their place of origin. The Mexican president says deportees will get a gift card loaded with about $100 US dollars, about the 2,000 pesos, so they can try and figure out their next move once they get back home.
Okay, very interesting. Let's pause it right there. Thank you for watching our YouTube channel. Let Spectrum News be your resource for balanced, in-depth political coverage, and click the subscribe button right here. You can also download our app or watch us on TV to learn more about the candidates, where they stand on the issues, and more. We'll see you then.